So, Viva Visions, a successful local London-based label. We were having a good time. 1992, I think it was. All was well with the world, and we were basically enjoying ourselves. We had a regular party event in a place called Bootleggers, which we called Affluence, which was well attended with the sort of nouveau riche black community that came from London and the surrounding areas. All was well, right? Now, and the video you're about to see shows that my memory is failing me, because when I look at some of this stuff, I cannot remember doing most of it. But I know it happened, and I'm glad it did, and it was nice and fond to look back at old memories. We had a jazz outfit. It was basically myself and a couple of friends, called the Endangered Species. We'd recorded some kind of jazz house, jazz hip hop, whatever you want to call it, stuff which had been well received in the UK, and we knew that there was a bit of international acclaim. We were contacted by labels in Italy, and you know, I was quite proud of ourselves. And I think we'd been for a meeting that day in London. And I'd essentially met my partner Alex in his house in South London, and we'd gone to the meeting, and I'd come back to his house, and then I was preparing to drive home to my house in North London. So I said, before I went, it's a long journey and I'm getting old, you know, I was in my late 20s, and I decided to use his loo. And whilst in his loo, Alex decided to play his answer phone to see if he'd got any messages, and he had a message from a certain DJ Pierre. And whilst I was in the loo, I could hear this message coming back, you know, hey, it's DJ Pierre here, really love what you guys are doing with Endangered Species and the label Viva Visions, really happening, loving it, sound of it in New York. Want to know if you guys would be interested in a chat, maybe to do a deal. So you can imagine it, I had to compose myself while in the loo, but obviously I came rushing out, said to Alex, we've got to call him right now. We got on the phone to Pierre. He basically was representing Strictly Rhythm, the label in New York at the time, and wanted to know if we could have a chat and maybe even get on a plane and come out for a meeting. And the rest, as they say, is history. So here we are, New York City. I think initially we had a couple of calls, conference calls with DJ Pierre, George Morel, Gladys Bizarro, and the owner of the label, Mark Finkelstein. Now, you'd had to be living under a rock to not know that Strictly Rhythm were probably the happening label in New York at the time. They had huge DJs on their roster, everything they did, and I was still DJing at the time, so everything they did, I would just buy without even listening to it. And they were absolute guaranteed floor fillers. To be mentioned in the same sort of bracket as people like Roger Sanchez was enough for me to feel that this was a deal worth going for. So basically we got on a plane, and I will tell you now, I don't remember being treated with such such salubriousness, if you like, ever before. And I'd done a bit of press and TV and whatever, but we were flown from the, as I remember, I'm not sure we flew directly from the New York from the airport to the hotel, but certainly we got on a helicopter. I remember that. And yeah, essentially they made us feel real special. The other thing I think to say is that although, you know, when you're not inside the bowels of a label, you don't know the inner workings, you just sort of see the record when you buy the 12-inch or whatever. But when we got to the offices, man, I felt like we should have been there 10 years earlier. You know, it was almost like coming home. And the cool thing was, although the label was massive in terms of, you know, street credibility and reach, it was quite a small little office. And we were welcomed in almost as part of the staff. You know, I ended up with a little desk, I could hang out. We were, you know, what you'll probably see from the video, right? that we were very much kind of family, and I'm so glad we recorded it. This is Barry.
Yo, what's up, y'all?
Hi, he's coming. I'm sorry about this.
Barry. Here we go. Some things we have nothing else to do but play music all day. What guys? Your song was on the radio today. Fancy. Yeah, John Robinson show.
Oh, brilliant, man. Brilliant.
Sounded fierce. That's Barry and her bad self working here. I tried calling you, but I didn't know what room you were in.
Oh,
Radio.
Oh, today? What station?
BLS.
Just saying hi. Excuse us, we're touristing.
Yeah, we're touristing.
This is the president of Chicken Rhythm. His name's Mark. This is the president. The president. How are you? All right. Good to see you. So in terms of the tracks, so essentially Ping Pong, Mother of the Future, African Festival, what they did was they pretty much released the Endangered Species EP. Alex then got to work with George Morel and the band Insight, which was already kind of credible in the sort of visions world. We then decided to export that to the US as well, and a couple of excellent tracks, Fantasy, which was one of my favourites, and of course Paradise, and has subsequently been sort of remixed, remastered and re-released to a whole new audience. So it just goes to show that stuff had serious longevity. We also had a follow-up with the Endangered Species called It's Just a Memory with Ellie Dawson, and essentially good times, man. We had some great parties. We went out there I think twice afterwards. We were able to live, I wouldn't say the high life. It was very much a labour of love. It wasn't something to try and get rich on, but we have something that I don't think many other UK setups had, and that was a licensing deal with Strictly Rhythm. We were the first ones to do so, to be frank with you, and we met everyone. We were in a plane, in a meeting, and shortly after the meeting, I got a message from George. He said, "Hey, you know those guys?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's 2 in a room." I said, 2 in a room? He said, "Yeah, wiggle it just a little bit." And we'd be like, and they want to meet you guys. They think you guys are awesome, And that would come out literally as sort of gossip. Eric Morello, the sadly and dearly departed Eric Morello, of course, I like to move it. He was often in the studio and obviously would subsequently release that track on Strictly. As I said, Roger Sanchez, everybody that you need to worry about, Knuckles, Humphreys, all of the names in the sort of in the early 90s were in and out of that office. And so, glad to be part of it.
All the news, I'm in love. All the things that I never felt before. Yo, don't you worry about a thing. I will keep you helping me. You won't need to search for another, 'cause love will always be on our menu, and I'll always be here for you. Don't you ever fear, I'll be yours.
So I think the one way we had of ensuring that tracks that we were making for Strictly Rhythm and obviously for ourselves, Visions were truly roadworthy was to go and test them in the club. So what we'd do is we'd spend most of the day in the studio. We'd then take a couple of DATs down to a couple of clubs, both obviously here and in the US. We'd give them to the DJ. Hopefully we knew the DJ, in which case we'd get an instant pump, as it were. And he'd put them on, and then we'd look at the crowd reaction. We'd hear how it sounded over the big speakers, and then maybe go back and tweak or whatever and do that again. And let's just say it was a big excuse for us to go to clubbing as much as we possibly could, both in London and New York, and we did it. Trust me, we did it. So how you had Club Shelter, you had the Tunnel Club, we had Broadway, and when we released tracks like Paradise from Insight, we were instantly impressed. The minute the DJ played the DAT, the bass would hit, the kick drum would pump in, and we'd see people move in, and we knew we had something special there. And what was even more impressive was obviously the fact that Insight, they did a Broadway mix just in homage to that fantastic club. And the Broadway specifically, I seem to have vivid memories of all the decadence that went down there and all the various wonderful outfits, some quite shocking and some just truly memorable. And let's just say that I'll carry those memories with me to the grave. So glad I'm the age I am so that we could club in the 90s like we did. Good times.
Sky
Leave our troubles far behind us. You and me are beating as one. Nothing stops us now. Can you feel the love that is growing?